Did you see this anecdote in a piece in the Washington Post from Sam Cosmi?
I saw it.
Now, I don't really have the context of why this came up today in this story, but we've talked a lot about Eric Bieniemy not being popular with players last year. A couple different times. I wouldn't call it a report as much as just me explaining why guys weren't happy or talking about the fact that I'm hearing from players that they weren't digging the offensive side of the building, so to speak. Well, more and more is going to trickle out. This is just getting started, I think, anecdotally. You see today a story from Sam Cosmi, but I'll read here from the Post. Last season, Eric Bieniemy came to town to run the offense, and he brought with him a new title that gave him power and some asinine rules that made no sense, including a rule about hats and how grown men should wear them. Quote, last year I was not allowed to wear my hat backwards in the building. So that's a little fun fact there, Cosmi said, revealing the shocking secret. That was something that we as players, offensive side, we weren't allowed to wear our hats backwards, end quote. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's not vague. He wasn't well received, talking about Bieniemy. Ron Rivera said so. Remember? Like, before the season started, he already kind of put an us versus them kind of a deal, right? Had made it that, a lot of players have complained to me and made it seem like Bieniemy was in over his head, didn't do many favors in that regard. But, he had his approach. It didn't work well. And it's one of those things where I think back to so many different coaches and coordinators over the years. When Greg Williams, for example, is screaming at you to do your assignment, to do this, to put your you-know-what in the C-gap, and if you do the thing that he asks and you get results, you go, okay, I can live with that. I can live with getting screamed at. I'll get chewed out if it leads to something positive. So Bieniemy's making you do this, that, and the other thing, and the offense isn't real good. Receivers are running to the same spot, almost guarding each other, and things don't look real good. Then it's hard to take that stuff seriously. Does that make sense? You can be as disciplined as you want to be if what you're saying leads to results. I mean, I think of Bill Belichick basically saying, you do these three things, and this is what we ask of you on a given day to be professional, et cetera. But you do these three things, you're going to win the game, and then you win 85% of your games over 15, 16 years. There's buy-in there. When you don't have the results, and you guys can see it pretty quickly, they're not stupid. Now you're just a hard ass for hard ass's sake, and that doesn't play.
Yeah, for me, it's less complicated than even that. And I am pro when a coach has a team meet a dress code on the road or something like that. I have no problem with that. I certainly understand when teams don't do it as well in this era. But if I was to find out that a head coach said, hey, when we travel, I want everyone in dress shirts and slacks, or I want everybody in a tie. Old school, kind of silly, but I like that. There is a business element to the trip that we're taking. Like, I'm cool with that. I think this is a step further than that, and it's just silly. I still remember in the first house I lived in, I grew up until I was 18 years old. My parents had the exact same house. And then when I graduated high school and went to school, I was the third of four siblings. There was only one left in the house. They moved to a smaller home. But in the house that I grew up in King George, I remember we had a party one time, and my dad invited some people over from work. And I don't remember the guy's name. I could picture him right now.
Okay.
And I'm in the kitchen, and I walk in, and I shake his hand. And my parents were especially my father, were adamant about how you shake people's hand, firm handshake, you look them in the eyes. We were very personable even as young people, right? Yes, no, yes, ma'am, thank you, all that stuff. Kind of kids where your parents get complimented, right? Like we were friendly kids, and it was important to my parents that we were. But I bring this up just to tell you, one of my dad's friends from work was there, and so my dad calls me over, and I reach my hand out and I say, hey, sir, how are you? My name's Grant, whatever. And this guy takes my hat, which was backwards. I was in my home, right? And he spins it around and he puts it on frontwards. He goes, don't wear a backwards hat. It looks foolish. This guy I've never met before.
Okay.
I still remember that today. It was so disrespectful, for lack of a better term, but there is something very personable about that, if that makes it personal almost. When you start, like, getting into the appearance, it's beyond, hey, guys, you need to dress up. Like, you're telling a grown-up, and I don't remember how old I was. I was probably a young teenager. I don't even know if it relates, but my point is, don't tell a 27-year-old with kids that he can't wear his hat a certain way. By the way, look at the difference in the building now where Dan Quinn's wearing a backwards hat every single day, which is kind of funny. But I find that kind of fake tough guy stuff nonsensical. And in this era especially, it will not fly. There's a reason Eric Bieniemy's coaching in college right now. You will not get a gig in this league if players don't like working for you, if players don't want to put their bodies on the line for you. And this is tip of the iceberg anecdotal stuff. It's coming. There's going to be more. But there were a lot of little things like this with how people were talked to, how people were treated. And I remember the phones burning up last year, and they will again if we do other topics on it, where guys don't like working, and Eric Bieniemy's a champion, and they're losers, and they need to fall in line. There is a right and wrong way, I think, whether you like it or not, in this era, to be viewed as someone that players want to play for. He never found a way to walk that line, period. And part of it is telling someone how to wear their hat, which is not important as it pertains to football, and it's a silly, dumb thing. And we'll hear more of it, I'm sure, because guys like Sam Cosmi didn't like him very much, and they don't mind shooting their bullets into the air now because nobody's there, right? But the stories will be coming out, I'm sure. But my point is, if he's ever going to get another opportunity in this league, he's going to have a reckoning as far as he takes great pride, I think, in doing it the way it was done when he played and in being really old school. I don't think that works anymore. And maybe, this is where I'll bridge to your point, maybe if you're great, maybe if you scheme like Kyle Shanahan, if you design offense like Mike McDaniel, if you call plays like you're Kevin Sumlin or something, maybe you can pull it off. But he wasn't doing that.
No. And the only thing I'll say is because he was, I guess I don't have a better word for it, but because he was a villain in this story, I don't have any sympathy for him. I also think two things can be true, that I don't have a ton of sympathy for the players who basically were already kvetching a couple weeks into training camp for trying something different. A new OC wasn't here because everything was great. Right? So players whining to the coach, I don't think that was particularly great either.
But if you're getting yelled at in a way that you haven't ever been yelled at as a professional at work by your boss, I could understand being upset about that.
TuneIn is the audio platform